Hello, everybody. I am Sarthak Kaul, and this is True Calling. Our guest today is Dr. Shehzad Batliwala. Shez came to the US as an illegal immigrant when he was 7 years old. To make ends meet for his family, he founded Smartphone ER as a teenager, which was a iPhone repair business, transformed it into a multi-store franchise, and then went on to break barriers in the medical field. He became the first DO, which is a doctor of osteopathic medicine, to explore space medicine with NASA. He also got his MBA in the space economy, being the only doctor in the program. He is a part time comedian, and so we started the conversation off talking about comedy's role in tragedy, finding purpose in hardship, exploring inner and outer space, burnout, and much more. Thank you for being on this journey with me, and I hope you all enjoy this one. Take care. Dude, so where do we even begin? Because, I mean, medicine, space, comedy, undocumented.
Yeah,
There's so many topics to touch.
for sure. Where do you want to start, man?
I'm gonna ask you. I'm gonna ask you a question in a different way. Then, when you were, remember, at least being conscious and like thinking about yourself, what is the main question that you were asking yourself?
Why am I doing what I'm doing? What do I really want, right? What do I really want to accomplish in life? Because I spent so much of my time just doing things without really knowing the reasoning behind it, whether it was family pressures or societal pressures, right? This is what I'm supposed to do. And I wonder how many of us spend our lives doing things that we're supposed to do,
Mhm.
right? Versus what is it that you really want to do? I think that's been the driving force behind everything that I am trying to do now. And the more I think about that question, the more the focus of my life gets refined, right? When you look at my life from the outside, just like you mentioned, I'm all of these things, right? Like, what is this? What am I trying to do? What is this guy about, right? It has started to become more and more clear, and I still have a long way to go, but it's all coming together essentially for me to be an inspirational, motivational speaker, right? I want to inspire through comedy. That's what I want to do. And it sounds so simple when I say it like that. It's like, really, you have to go through all of that to figure that out, you know? Because if I'm going to say I want to inspire, well, I got to have something to inspire about. And that takes a deep dive into understanding your story, your background. And that's true for any of us, right? I'm not special. I just have this unique story, but so do you. So do all these, crazy people you have on your podcast, right? And I think if you understand your story, inevitably you will find that there are gifts in it. And I think one of the purposes of my life is to use the gifts of my story to inspire others.
Have you heard of this before? Tragedy plus time equals comedy.
No, but man, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
as you were speaking, it's the first thing which came to my mind. You
Yeah.
you give tragedy time and you see it from a different lens. You make that frame out of it. You make it
Yes.
funny. And there's South by. I live in Austin,
Yeah.
and there's South by Southwest every year here. And this past year there was Esther Perel. I don't know if you know her.
Esther Perel
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
seems very familiar. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, relationships coach. And then there's Trevor Noah, you probably know,
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
comedian. So they had a conversation and one of the panels, and there's something that they said. They were talking about truth, and they were sort of saying humor relies on sharing a reality and finding a moment to connect, but it's a
Yep.
shared moment of truth that you're connecting on. What is the truth that you are sort of seeking right now?
That's a really good question. So I've spent a lot of my time feeling lonely and isolated and just not connected, right? And so I have this like desire, deep desire to be seen, right? To be heard. And I'm trying to figure out where that comes from. Why? do I have this intense desire to be seen and heard? And I think it's because I crave connection, right? Like deep down, it sounds really cliche and cheesy to say it, but I'm coming off this trip with my father. We went overseas to Mecca. So I'm off this like spiritual high. So,
Yeah.
everything I say is going to be clouded with that, right? But I've realized deep down, right? Deep down, I'm a very, like, I love people. I have a large capacity to love. But if you ask the people, like, for example, if you ask the people that I trained with in residency, I bet you that people would be like, he's kind of arrogant, He's kind of just always in his mind, right? And I was, right? There was all this stuff going on, and when you have all this stuff going on, and you're stressed, and you're just thinking too much about yourself, and you're in survival mode, which I was for the longest time. That deep desire to connect with others, it's numbed, it's suppressed, right? And once you start unraveling those layers of your life that got you in that space, you start to understand this, like, who you really are at your core. So I think that's who I'm at my core. And how do I like display that part of me? How do I get that part to come out? For me, it's exactly what you said. It's through comedy, and not just like, any kind of comedy. At least the type of comedy that I want to do is I want to be on stage, and I want to like almost make fun of the part of me that puts up an ego and an arrogance to protect myself, right? I kind of want to like poke fun at that part.
Yeah.
That's deprecating part, so that the true part of me can come out. And it's this very interesting duality that I'm trying to explore with comedy. But to circle back to your question, like, that's the truth. That's the essence of who I am that I'm trying to explore, right? Who I am at my core, and how was that core essence masked by whatever has happened to any of us, right? And how can I start to take off that mask?
Man, so let's go a little bit back to that part. Where does this come from? This feeling of not, feeling connected. Are there any instances you remember from childhood where you sort of saw that? Maybe it was like, for me, for example, it was like not fitting in with the friend circle and social circle that I had when I was in school.
Yeah,
Like just like not finding a good group of friends at that time to connect with, and then I wanted to like kind of put myself out there, or at times would just completely retreat because I'm like, I don't know who would understand me, or I wanted to be understood by people.
yeah,
So where does it come from you?
yeah. Um, Man, we go deep quick on this.
There we go.
Damn, I love it.
It's
It's just
either
like
super deep or it's just super shallow. There's nothing in the middle.
it's so funny. I think we're so alike in that way because my podcast is like very similar. Yeah, I mean, I think that's where the undocumented piece comes in, right? When you grow up undocumented, I don't know, man, it's hard to put into words, but you just feel like you don't belong. I couldn't even get a driver's license, and it's one thing to not belong. It's another to like not being able to tell anybody that you don't belong. I
Oh,
couldn't go around and be like, I'm illegal. I couldn't. Yeah, I had to be like hush hush about it, right?
your parents
Because
would tell you like to not ever share this with anyone.
yeah, I mean, I think part of it was that. Yeah, part of it was that because we just, yeah, we lived like in this kind of hyper vigilance state, because if people found out, then they might report us, and then we get kicked out of the country. I mean, it really
Hmm.
comes down to as simple as that, right? If somebody just like you for any reason and wants to be very like redemptive and vengeful, well, they can call ice on you. You know what I mean? And so like that was part of it, and just, yeah, not being able to like share my truth. We're talking about truth, right? Like, yeah, I'm undocumented. I don't have any papers. Sorry, it wasn't my fault, right? What can we do about it? Like, can I share this with anybody? Is there anybody out there who gets it, who understands? And I just lacked that for so long. So that's probably the biggest reason. Yeah, I mean, beyond that, like the typical stuff of being bullied and all this, and it would piss me off. I would get angry. But honestly, dude, I had such bigger fish to fry. I had such bigger things to worry about. Like my mom, wasn't well mentally growing up, so that was on my shoulders, and the immigration thing. It was always like a family affair. I feel like I would come home from school and we'd have this like round table gathering like almost every night. And the topic of discussion would be like, well, is our immigration situation is getting worse, or, well, mom didn't take her medicines the last couple of weeks and she's been telling us she did, but she didn't. So she's not well. Got to figure that part out. Or, financially, my dad had some jewelry stores in the mall. Financially, things are really tight. Like, there were no boundaries in my house. So anything going on from a family standpoint, I always knew about it, right? Even at like 12, 13, 14 years of age. And, whatever, right? Like, I'm done playing the victim thing. I played the victim role for a very long time in my life. So those things happened. They probably shouldn't have, but then who am I to say that? Like, there's a higher power at play. So I'm glad those things happen because I am who I am because of those struggles. But, practically speaking, there should be some boundaries in place in the household, right? Where children shouldn't be exposed to that kind of stuff. And I was. And so, like, and I'm a problem solver and I love my family. Like I said, I have a deep capacity to love. So I felt for my mom. I felt for my dad. And I just made it my mission, I think subconsciously, to do anything I can to take my family's pain away, right? And what am I good at? I'm good at school. I'm good at taking tests. So guess what? You want money? We gonna get money. I'm gonna go, right?
Spoke like a true Indian. Let's go.
Yo, let's go, right? I can take these tests, A, B, C, D. That's nothing, man. Back in India, we had to write stuff out.
Where in India
So,
was your family from, by the way?
Mumbai.
Okay.
Yeah, I was too, actually. Yeah, I was born in
Yeah.
India and I came here when I was 7. So yeah, those were I forgot your question already.
No,
I have
I
really
think
bad
you
ADHD, by the way, just so you know. I feel like that's like a standard thing that like high achievers like us, like everybody on your podcast is probably like, yeah, I have
Yeah,
ADHD.
no, the conversations go everywhere and they go to good places because of that, I think too. You just start
Yeah.
connecting. So, I mean, you're sort of helping your family financially like at a super young age. When did you switch from that victim mentality to now looking at yourself from a more empowered perspective?
Yeah. Like that kind of switch, right? From victimhood to visionary, I say, or empowerment, like that kind of drastic shift, I think only happens when you hit a rock bottom in life. And for me, that was my divorce. I came home one day, my wife had left
Whoa.
because I was so like locked into like, career and success and, climbing the ladder and all this stuff that my marriage was like the last thing that I was really focused on. And God bless her. Like, she put up with so much shit, dude. We're still, pretty decent like friends, and we still talk. And I was like, damn, Rima, like, I would have left if I was you. Like, shit, like,
And
put
she's
up with a
like, well,
lot.
I did.
Yeah, yeah. She was like, well, that was hard, right? That was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to go through. That was 3 years ago, and again, I cannot say I wish, coulda, shoulda, woulda, because everything happens for a reason, dude. Like, these things happen to me, and then, or just life happens, and I'm like, wow, like, there is a God, right? There's a higher power out there, because it all like starts to kind of make sense. But anyway, that was at the time I wasn't thinking like that. I was like, damn, how could you? So it was really hard, but I did the one thing that I've never done in my entire life. I quit. I resigned. At the time, I was in some advanced training, and I resigned from work. I was like, I took, several months off, did some part-time work, and just really like dug deep. I went to this retreat with a bunch of other men who come from similar backgrounds, like, immigrant heritage, and all of that. And that's where I started to unpack these layers of my life, right? Why was I so ambitious? Why was I so driven for external validation to the point of disconnecting from the people that I claimed to love, right? Why? And I just love asking why a lot because I think it goes deeper. You go deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's when I realized things like, wow, growing up undocumented, that was a traumatic experience for me, much more than I was giving it credit, right? Growing up in a household where I'm the first to even graduate high school, much less college and medical school, that's a really unique challenge that I wasn't giving enough credit to, right? I'm not saying these things to stroke my, to my ego. I'm saying because these are my realities, and it was hard going through those things, and I just never stopped to process any of that.
I mean, you're living in a scarcity survival mode.
Exactly.
A lot of the people that I have talked to now, including yourself, living a life that is sort of very purpose driven and want to like pursue their why, and they're on this path. But the common question that I get from someone about this topic is like, is that a champagne problem? Because when you think about it, when you were back in the days where you were kind of just figuring out how to just make ends meet for your family and helping them in that pursuit, you can't really think about what am I passionate about. It's like, okay, I have to figure out that I get the money for today, next week, not
Totally.
month, right? So what do you think? Does purpose have a place in this conversation? Can everyone just pursue their purpose?
Man, that's a really good question, dude. Um, yes, I think so. Because I like examples, right? So like, okay, like there's someone, and I've been in the situation, and still my dad, I guess, to some extent is like financially things are really tight, right? You're trying to pay the bills, you're trying to get by. Like, forget like all of these extravagant type of things, dude. I'm just trying to like live paycheck to paycheck, right? Okay, well, first of all, are you truly living paycheck to paycheck? Or is your lifestyle very inflated, right? Because you're trying to keep up with the Joneses, right? Do you have this like societally defined, kind of definition of what success means, right? And so you're chasing something that you don't even really want. That's preventing you from addressing your purpose. That's one, right? The other is, well, no, like I really am living paycheck to paycheck, right? It's not, I mean, I have like a very reasonable standard that I want for my life, and I'm just trying to get there. I can't even get there, so I can't even talk about my purpose. Okay. Why can't you get there? What's preventing you from getting there? Right? Could we learn some skills? Could we learn better time management, finance management, right? I know what the problem is. First of all, you got to know what the problem is. Is it because your success of definition is skewed, or you don't have the skill sets to get there? Whatever the problem is, let's figure out the problem. So once you address the problem and you can get there, yes, like you're not going to, purpose is not something like, I don't know what mine is, dude. I have an idea, right? But I don't think you ever get there. I think it's an evolution. In for your question, in this example, the first evolution of this person to get to their purpose will be to let's get the bare minimum needs met. And we're not getting there. There's a reason. It's not because you're dumb, because I believe people are intelligent beings, right? Glass always half full. Humanity is not the issue. The skill levels are. So what is it going to take to get you there so that eventually you can figure out your purpose? So that's kind of how I think about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, that's sort of how I think about it too. And I mean, you are a living example of being in a mode where you weren't thinking about these things, and then once you started, I inherently think we're problem solvers. Like
Yes.
inherently, if we're put in situations that are not where we want to be, we will try to get our way out of it. That is problem solving, and we just get better at the qualities of problems we're solving in our lives as we keep on
Yes.
moving up.
What gets you into trouble, I think, in me, myself included, is it's like there's a problem that needs to be solved, but the barrier or the motivation needed to even begin to solve the problem is just so high that you just kind of give up, right? And then things like
Yeah.
anxiety and all of these various negative emotions come into play. And then what do people do? We numb those negative emotions. Alcohol, drugs, sex, whatever, right? And so people kind of get stuck in this rut, and I was there too, man. Like workaholism is an addiction, right?
Let's talk about
Purposeless,
that.
purposeless achieving, right? Purposeless achievements. I mean, for me, it was like all I wanted to be seen, and I thought the only thing that was going to get me to be seen was to do something so extraordinary that people would have no choice but to accept me, right? And for me, that meant becoming an astronaut. That was my goal. And I don't just say it as a kind of a childish, like, I want to be an astronaut. No, no. Like, I read somewhere that they were sending doctors to space. So I made it my mission in life to go to medical school. I interned at NASA. I stalked astronauts. I went to space medicine conferences. I did all of this stuff. I interned at NASA, all this stuff, because I got it in my head that that's my goal, right? When I was little and all this stuff was going on, the only place where I would feel that sense of belonging and connection was space. I would just be on the roof of our house just looking out. And for whatever reason, just the vastness of space and stars would always just make me feel like I belong. So I connected those things in my head, and that became my mission. And so I was doing all these things, but like, again, if you listen to astronauts give interviews on YouTube, which I do a lot, it's probably not something most people do. I do that. You will hear them say, love, right? To chase your passion. Like, if you ask them, hey, what does it take to become an astronaut? They'll be like, okay, well, chase your passion, do what you love. And if NASA wants that at that time, then they'll select you. You'll get selected, right? I was the other way around. I was looking at all of astronauts' bios, and I was doing the things that they did so that I could get there, right? Not the things that I wanted to do.
Interesting.
There's a lot there. We can really delve into that. So what did I do? I set that goal, okay, and now what became my motivation? Just that, right? Not because it's something I want to do, but because if I can get there, then I will be seen, right? That's the
I mean, I don't know if
epitome
I'll be
of
able to see
belonging.
you, man, from Earth.
It's the epitome of belonging and connection, right? So anyway, and then crazy, right? But at the NASA Johnson Space Center, I got to live with an astronaut for 2 months. His name was Chris Cassidy, and he described to me what's called the overview effect. I don't know if you've ever heard of this,
Is this is
right?
this where is this where you once you're out in space and you look at
Yes.
Earth, you sort of feel like you really belong?
Yes. You look at Earth from that vantage point,
Hmm.
and astronauts describe just this shift in their thinking. They come back to Earth much more grounded, right, pun intended. They feel this like interconnectedness with
Hmm.
humanity, this oneness with humanity. And how ironic, right? That like that's what I was chasing. I was chasing the stars to be so different, only to finally, thank God, have this understanding that from that vantage point, you're not that different.
Hmm.
You know, we all belong. We all feel the same things, man. We all feel lonely at times. We all feel like we don't belong. We all feel disconnected, you know?
What do you? There's so much to unpack here, but let's start
I
with
know.
space first, because I know that a lot of your mission is to sort of bring out these topics around space and around space medicine out. So, firstly, what was the experience doing a MBA in space medicine?
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, just so like refreshing, right? So refreshing and novel, right? Because not a lot of people know about the space economy. It's this multi-trillion dollar economy that's unfolding. And it's just kind of happening in the background. Not a lot of people know about it. But because of things like Elon Musk and SpaceX and the reusability of rockets, the cost to access space has gone down drastically,
Mhm.
right? That's the first step. If you're going to get into anything, the first step is access to that. And before it was like magnitudes, orders of magnitudes more expensive to send anything to space. But anyway,
Yeah.
because of reusability of rockets, cost to access space has decreased
Yeah.
significantly. And so we learned about the different ways in which the common person can start to get involved, right? I mean, in 100 years from now, we're going to be living in a completely different, not just a global world, but whatever the word is for that, not just on Earth, but there's going to be, I'm convinced that there's going to be a lot of movement and activity in low Earth orbit and Earth itself, right? So learning about the different case uses of that, interacting with the different people that came for that experience. I mean, in my class, I was the only physician, ophthalmologist too, of all people. Everybody was just like, "Dude, what are you doing here?" But there was just like there was a general from the Space Force in the
Wow.
class, and business people. I mean, just so it was really fascinating to see how all of these different people from so many different walks of life came together. That's what space is, right? We all belong in space, and that 1 year MBA program was kind of an exercise.
Can we talk a little bit about SANS?
Yeah.
And you're an ophthalmologist, and there's this intersection you found between like what happens in space and what you're doing in your practice right now.
Yeah.
Just explain to the people that might be listening to this, like what have you found as something that could be a really good intersection for you to dive into?
Yeah, good question. So I don't know if it's really SANS related, but I think I know where you're going with this. So basically, SANS is spaceflight associated neuroocular syndrome, right? So it's this phenomenon that happens when you go to space, you lose gravity, and because of that, all of the fluids, we don't really think about this, but on Earth, gravity helps to keep the fluids kind of dispersed uniformly throughout your body. When you lose that, all of the fluids shift toward the top of your head. It causes swelling of your optic nerves. Your optic nerve is the most important nerve that connects your eyeball to your brain. It's one of the most important nerves for vision, right? So it's made up of 1.2 million tiny little nerves, and that nerve starts to swell when you lose gravity. And so far, knock on wood, astronauts do not have any permanent vision loss from this issue. They need some reading glasses basically in space and also when they come back down to Earth, but they don't have any permanent vision loss from this issue. But is that going to change if we decide to go to Mars, which is a 2 year round trip, right? What happens then? When you're in deep space, when you're outside of the protection of low Earth orbit, you're exposed to deep space radiation, what happens then? So there's all of these sort of unknown answers, right? It's a very serious issue. My research was there on something called the impedance threshold device, ITD, which is basically, long story short, it's a way to essentially suck all the fluids back down and keep them down. I guess intersection in medicine and space, I don't really think is going to be SANS related. It's going to be psychological. It's going to be more on the overview effect, right? The thing that I struggled with for so long in my life was this need for connection and belonging. The overview effect is a metaphor to belong, is a metaphor for connection. And I'm convinced that you don't have to go to space to experience this shift in your perspective.
Yeah, just take some mushrooms, guys.
Yeah, well, dude, can you imagine mushrooms in space?
Oh,
That's a whole different conversation, but no, that'd be next level. So I really think like my advocacy for space, my passion for space, is really going to be fulfilled in that realm, right? Of helping people understand what the overview effect is, and helping them bring that down to earth and really embody it so that we can feel like we all belong. I think if we can feel that, if we can feel belonging and connection, I really think the world would be a better place. There would be less wars, less conflict, for sure.
where is the source of this lack of belonging coming from, right? Why is it currently that this world feels so divided, right? You've talked a lot about, politically as well. I've seen you
Yeah,
comment on
yeah,
this, but where have we gone far
yeah.
from the unity?
Yeah, I think about this a lot, man. I think about this a lot. What does it mean to connect, right? If we're going to say that the world is disconnected, well, what does connection mean? I think it comes down to relatability. If I share my opinions, my deepest, darkest fears, and just my opinion on something with you or anybody else, am I going to be attacked for it? Or am I going to be given a judgment-free zone and a judgment-free space, pun intended, to be myself, right? We don't have that in this world. We don't listen to each other. We listen to respond. And when I say we, by the way, I hate preachy people, and I'm not trying to preach, right? When I say we, I mean me as well. I do this too, right? This is a work in progress. But I don't think that we listen to each other. We listen to respond, not to really listen and understand the other person's perspective. I mean, imagine if we did that. Imagine if you and I and everybody that we interact with listened to each other and gave each other a judgment-free zone to be themselves and actually had discourse and dialogue, right? Whether I'm a Muslim or and I'm talking to a Christian, or I'm an Israeli and I'm talking to a Palestinian or whatever. Imagine if we did that. But we don't, because we think we're right. And it's the ego. Yeah, it's the ego. And part of it is also like, from a practical standpoint, it's this thing, right? It's these devices that we're hooked onto. Because think about it, what does it take for you and I to listen to each other and give each other the space to be ourselves, judgment-free zone? It takes focus, it takes attention, right? It takes processing those things. But I really fundamentally like believe that focus and attention is under attack with this thing, right? Dude, I cannot stay off of this thing. I mean, I have to put myself, like, I have to give myself like screen time limits and all these things to make it so that I can actually pay attention and focus, right? And that's part of it. And if we go one layer deeper, well, why? Why are we so hooked on this thing? Well, what are we doing? What are most people doing? Social media scrolling, right? Comparison. There's this portrayal of what success looks like on social media. And we're human beings. We want that. We want to belong, right? So we're scrolling and man, I wish I had that car. I wish I had that house. Damn, he's got a beautiful wife or a beautiful husband or whatever, right? So I really do think all of that is interconnected. But you said it, man. You said it. Ego. We can
And
figure out a
you're
way to put that in check. We win.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways that the world shows us that our ego it shouldn't be the driver. I mean, things like, I mean, divorce is a huge one, man. I mean, the like having a divorce, I feel like definitely not that. I mean, I've experienced a severe breakup a few months ago. I thought
A
that
few
this
months
person,
ago, you want to talk about it, bro?
I can tell you about it. I can share about it. I think it's been enough time for the tragedy to become comedy. So it's it was it was the first time that I actually thought that this woman was someone that I would marry. It was going in that direction, and then long story short, it didn't. But it instantly removed all this makeup that I had put on like who I am and how great I am as a person, and why people want to be around me, because someone that like you kind of build an identity with, and a collective identity. We're talking about creating collective identities, or like feeling like we connect with others. When that strong of an identity or connection breaks, I think that is just a complete dissolution of what you believe to be true, right? And that's the
Mm,
other side of ego, is like your ego was helping you when you were in that journey, but then
mm,
when you're separated, you realize that a lot of things you assumed that were right about you, or beliefs that you had, have to be like re-examined and looked at. So for me, it was like a big wake up call to just like look at what is it that I am missing in my behavior, in the way that I am. Because again, I don't want to put this blame on the other person. Is like, what am I doing wrong, and what did I do
yeah.
wrong in this situation? So yeah, I mean, in that moment, it was like a complete dissolution of ego, and I feel like it led me to like, it's kind of like moving to a different city or country. You like can start afresh after that in some ways, and you can show up as a completely new person because no one around you really knows you anymore.
Mm,
um I feel like that's something that happened to me for sure. Like I used it in that way to just reshape what I believe in, and things that I am looking
mm,
for, and the way, the person I want to become. And I think a lot of the things we do, be it traveling to space, or be it doing comedy, be it like podcasting, is just an avenue for us to see who we are as people, and it's a vehicle for growth
yeah,
from that standpoint.
absolutely. It's an exercise in self-awareness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I
What
just
did you
wanted
learn?
to.
What did you
Okay,
learn about yourself?
man, great question. Um, One thing I learned is that I need to. Okay, you've touched on this in a podcast I've seen before as well, of like the male figure, like especially growing up in, or being around a Eastern society, specifically Indian. There's this stigma around what a male figure should be, and I think it was a lot about like, I kind of went the other way to. I'm like, okay, I don't want to be this like traditional male figure that
Mm,
shows up like. I think the traditional aspect of being a man involves a lot of like showing direction and guidance, and
mm,
like, and like leading, and those are the traits that come out. And I'm like, dude, I don't want to be that traditional person, because I've seen that is also destroyed relationships. So I was like, hey, I'm gonna back off and
mm,
not be so much of a guidance towards my partner. And basically I took on much more feminine energy than I did like masculine energy in the relationship. And I have now like reshaped that into wanting to lead more in the initiatives and situations that I'm in. Because I think that there is a balance to be struck, but I think I went too much on the side of letting my partner, decide for things or um, figure stuff out for herself and like just like talk it through rather than like helping her really in the
Yeah.
moment that she needs to. I think that's the switch that like has been the biggest switch for me.
Interesting. So you would like you would be that person where you would kind of talk things through with her and stuff like that, but that was almost like not welcomed or not what she
No,
wanted
not
in that moment.
yeah, I feel like it was too much of that and less of supporting in some ways, like a different kind of support. Again, like people need different kinds of support, right? There's a support that I think you need right now in the ways that you need to be helped, and there's something that you actually need. What is it that you actually need as support? And I think that I think it's an emotional intelligence question, honestly. It's like how can
Yeah.
you become more aware from an emotional perspective what the person needs and not be so full of
Mm.
yourself to like give them what you think they need.
Mm. So are you basically are you accepting in that particular example that you were to blame, I
Yeah.
guess, or
Yeah, man, I have
uh,
taken that on myself, and like that's just how I've now taken.
wow,
Is like everything is sort of my, like I am responsible for the decisions that are or the outcomes that are happening.
that's beautiful, man. That's awesome. That's a great outlook. I tried to do the same thing in my marriage there, my ex marriage too. But wow, interesting. Damn, get you going like that, bro. Make you want to change your energy.
No, I
Love the
mean,
way you
yeah,
described it.
yeah, and I don't think I've ever shared this really. I mean, especially publicly. So this is something that, I mean, thanks to you for creating the space again.
You gonna
Um,
edit it out? You can edit it out.
and no, it's all good. This is all part of it. Okay, I have one more question for you,
Sure.
which is around this topic. I think you're very passionate about exploring burnout because you have kind of gone through it yourself in
Hmm.
the work that you have done. Can you talk a little bit more about a time where you really faced burnout and what did you realize about what actually drives you in those moments?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think happens for a lot of different reasons. Um, it's used a lot in the medical field, but I think, I mean, you know, if you do things without really understanding the why and you lose your sense of purpose, I think that's burnout, right? Because at that point you're just kind of numb, and that was my situation. I was going through the motions, but not really like feeling the joy of what I was doing. For me, that happened in my fellowship. So I mentioned I resigned. I was 6 months in and I resigned from my fellowship. I was supposed to do it for a year. And, I got a little diploma and everything. I kind of graduated early, if you will. But for me, either way you slice it, I quit. Like that was what I did. And I have never done that before in my entire life. I have never quit anything. Once I started, I will see through it. And so for me, it's almost like I had to like kill the part of me that was so driven by a definition of success that didn't feel true to me. I had to like kill that person. And I did it by resigning
Wow.
so that I could really figure out, well, what is it by definition of success, right? What does drive me then if it's not this? And what I learned after I took that step is that I am a multi-dimensional, multifaceted individual. I've come to accept that about myself. And I've also learned that, what your strength is can also be your weakness, and it usually is. So my strength is that I am a very curious person. I'm interested in a lot of different things, and I'm also good at a lot of different things. That can also be a weakness in the sense that you can appear to be unfocused and kind of all over the place. I think what I had to do was I had to take a break from the thing that I was doing for over a decade, which was medicine, to figure out what were the other parts of me that I wasn't watering, right? You water plant, it grows. You water a seed, it grows. What were the other parts of me that I was neglecting? I just had kind of hit that point where I needed to find that, right? And taking a step back from medicine allowed me to figure out the other parts of me that I was passionate about. And so now it's all sort of come together where I am using my expertise in medicine, right? And the fact that I'm a physician, yes, to diagnose and treat a medical problem, but also to sort of leverage my story of becoming a physician, right? Of starting as someone who was undocumented and getting to this point in my life and using the examples of resilience and perseverance and all the different things that I've learned on my journey to becoming a doctor, right? I want to extract those lessons, and those are the things that I want to inspire upon people, right? So you see what I'm saying? Like, I had to kind of take a step back away from medicine to understand how medicine fits into a bigger picture of my life. That was the journey of burnout for me. It's different for everyone, I'm sure. That's how it's played out for me.
Yeah, remembering why you're doing something and if you're not doing it for the right reasons. Because I mean, the reason I asked you this question, of course, also you're in the medical field. My sister, well, she's my first cousin. She just
Yeah.
took her MCAT like 2-3 months ago, and looking forward to med school. And then the MCAT score wasn't what she wanted. But through that process, she just had this extreme burnout, like just doing that for whatever 3 months, 4 months
Yeah.
of preparing and all that. And then now she's gone through this, and then she gets a thing that she doesn't want, the result. Now she's like, well, I have to take this again.
I was that guy. I had to take it like, two times.
Yeah, so I mean, it comes from that place. Well, dude, I appreciate the time that you spent and sharing your story. I mean, it's a very unique journey, and I think you've gotten it out in a very beautiful way of just the path that you've taken. So I'm super thankful that you were able to join.
Thank you, man. This was probably one of the most engaging and in like deep conversations I've had in a long time. You've got a gift of really extracting that out of people. So keep doing what you're doing. I love it.
Man, I appreciate it. Anywhere that people can follow you and follow your journey.
Yeah, LinkedIn would be the biggest, and my website's visionary.com. It's being revamped now, so don't judge. But
Or judge, but it'll be better.
give me feedback. Yeah,
Yeah.
feedback. Don't judge.
Thank you,
Okay, awesome.
Shez.
Thank you,
Awesome.
bro.
Thank you.